Agent Vexathala materialized inside the abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of Detroit at precisely 0347 hours. The dimensional shift left her synthetic human skin tingling, but the disguise held perfectly. After 18 months of preparation, she looked exactly like Dr. Hannah Louise, a visiting xenobiologist from Taiwan. The forged credentials were flawless, her backstory unbreakable. The Zephyrian High Command had been monitoring human activities for 3 decades, watching their rapid technological advancement with growing concern. Other alien species reported disturbing encounters with humans, tales of impossible survival, unexplained victories, and abilities that defied known physics. The Council demanded answers. Vexathala's mission was simple: infiltrate human society, observe their capabilities, and discover what they were hiding. What she found would shake the foundations of the Galactic Order. The next morning, she walked through the gates of the Advanced Biological Research Center in Ann Arbor. The facility looked deceptively peaceful: glass buildings surrounded by manicured lawns, scientists in lab coats moving between buildings with casual confidence. Too casual, she thought. On Zephyr Prime, such important research would be protected by plasma barriers and armed sentries. "Dr. Louise, welcome to our little corner of madness," said Dr. Michael Torres, the facility director. He was a man in his 40s with kind eyes and an easy smile that immediately made Vexathala suspicious. In her experience, the most dangerous beings often appeared the most harmless. "Thank you for accepting my research proposal," she replied, using the carefully practiced accent. "I'm eager to learn about your work on extremophile organisms." "Extremophiles?" Michael laughed. "That's putting it mildly. Some of the organisms we study here shouldn't be able to exist. But they do. Nature has a way of surprising us." He led her through corridors lined with laboratories filled with equipment she recognized as primitive by galactic standards. Yet the research results posted on walls showed discoveries that should have been impossible with such basic technology. "This is Dr. Rachel Kim," Michael said, introducing her to a young woman hunched over a microscope. "She's our expert on organisms that survive in impossible environments." Rachel looked up and smiled. "Impossible is my favorite word," she said. "It usually means we're about to learn something amazing." Vexathala spent her first week observing normal human scientific behavior. They were intelligent, but not exceptionally so, curious, but within expected parameters. She began to think the High Command's fears were unfounded. Then the accident happened. It was a Tuesday morning when the containment breach occurred. Vexathala was in Lab 7 with Rachel when the alarm started screaming. The computer screens flashed red warnings. "Biohazard Level 9 containment failure." "What's happening?" Vexathala asked, her training keeping her voice steady despite the panic rising in her chest. "The Yellowstone samples," Rachel said, her face pale. "Something's gotten loose." Through the observation window, Vexathala could see into the adjacent lab. A thick black substance was spreading across the floor, eating through metal, glass, and plastic like acid. But this wasn't acid. Her sensors detected something far worse. The substance was alive, and it was learning. "Everyone out," Michael's voice echoed through the facility's communication system. "Full evacuation, now!" But Dr. James Patterson was trapped in the contaminated lab. The 60-year-old biochemist had been running tests when the breach occurred. Now he stood pressed against the far wall, surrounded by the expanding organism that was systematically dissolving everything in its path. "The emergency protocols will contain it," Rachel said, but her voice lacked conviction. "The isolation barriers will deploy automatically." They watched in horror as the isolation barriers descended, and the organism ate through them in seconds. "That's impossible," someone whispered behind them. "Those barriers are made of compressed titanium carbide composite." The organism was now covering 80% of the lab floor and moving toward James with terrifying purpose. Vexathala calculated that he had perhaps 30 seconds before being consumed by a life form that could apparently digest any known material. Then James did something that changed everything. He closed his eyes and placed his hands flat against the wall behind him. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly the wall began to change. The metal and concrete started flowing like liquid, opening up to create a passage to the adjacent laboratory. "James, what are you doing?" Michael's voice came through the intercom, tight with concern. "Something I hoped I'd never have to do," James replied calmly, stepping through the passage he had somehow created in the solid wall. The moment he was through, the wall flowed back together, sealing perfectly. Vexathala stared at the wall. Her advanced sensors detected no trace of the passage that had existed moments before. It was as if James had temporarily convinced matter itself to rearrange according to his will. "How did he do that?" she asked Rachel, fighting to keep her voice steady. Rachel was quiet for a long time, studying Vexathala's face. "That's classified," she finally said, "but since you're going to be working with us for the next 6 months, maybe it's time you learn the truth about human capabilities." That evening, Rachel took Vexathala to a secure conference room in the facility's basement. Michael was there, along with 3 people she hadn't met before. The atmosphere was tense, like they were about to cross a line they couldn't uncross. "Dr. Louise," Michael began, "what I'm about to tell you is known to fewer than 10,000 people on Earth. You'll need to sign some very serious agreements before we proceed." Vexathala signed the documents without hesitation, her curiosity overriding her caution. "What James did today isn't unique," Rachel said. "About 12% of humans possess what we call reality interface syndrome. They can interact with matter and energy at the quantum level through conscious intention." "That's impossible," Vexathala said, though she was beginning to suspect that impossible didn't mean what she thought it meant when applied to humans. "3 years ago, we thought so too," said Dr. Elena Rodriguez, one of the people she hadn't met. "Then we started documenting cases. People who could heal from injuries that should have been fatal, individuals who could survive in environments that should have killed them instantly, humans who could influence probability itself." Michael activated a holographic display showing brain scans. "Look at this. Normal human brain activity versus someone using Iris abilities. See those patterns? They're quantum entanglement signatures. These people are somehow connecting their consciousness to the fundamental structure of reality." "How is this possible?" Vexathala asked, genuinely fascinated despite herself. "We think it's evolutionary," Elena explained. "Humans have been under constant pressure for millions of years. Predators, diseases, natural disasters, wars. The ones who survived were the ones who could do more than should have been possible when it mattered most. But only 12%? The ability manifests strongest during extreme stress or life-threatening situations," Rachel said. "Most people never realize they have it because they never need it. But when they do need it," she gestured toward the wall where James had escaped. Over the following weeks, Vexathala was introduced to others with Aris abilities. She met Lisa Santos, a paramedic who could somehow diagnose internal injuries just by touching patients. Her success rate was 100%, something that should have been statistically impossible. "I don't know how I do it," Lisa explained during their meeting. "I just touch someone and I know what's wrong. It's like their body tells me it's problems." Then there was David Kim, a structural engineer who could sense stress points in buildings and bridges with perfect accuracy. "Metal fatigue has a feeling," he told her as they toured a construction site. "I can feel where a beam wants to break, sometimes years before it actually would." It saved dozens of lives. But the most disturbing encounter was with Marcus Webb, a former military operator who worked as a security consultant. "Show her the probability cascade," Michael suggested during their meeting. Marcus nodded and pulled out a coin. "Call it," he said to Vexathala. "Heads." Marcus flipped the coin, caught it, and revealed heads. "Luck," Vexathala said. "Call it 9 more times." She did. Heads came up 9 more times in a row. "The mathematical probability of that sequence is 1 in 1,024, Marcus said. "But watch this." He closed his eyes and flipped the coin again. This time he called it himself. Tails. It was tails. "I can influence probability within certain parameters," he explained. "In combat situations, it means my weapons rarely jam, enemy shots often miss, and I find cover where there shouldn't be any. Small changes, but they add up." "You're describing localized reality manipulation," Vexathala said, her scientific training warring with what she was witnessing. That's exactly what it is, Michael confirmed, and we're only beginning to understand it. The breakthrough came when they showed her the classified military files. Director Coleman Harrison from a shadowy government division arrived to brief her personally. Dr. Louise, what you're about to see is classified at the highest levels, Harrison said. He was a lean man in his 50s with the bearing of someone accustomed to keeping dangerous secrets. We've been tracking risk phenomena in military contexts for decades. The files contained hundreds of reports dating back to World War II. Soldiers who had survived direct hits from artillery shells. Pilots who had landed destroyed aircraft through sheer will. Submarine crews who had somehow found air pockets in sinking vessels where none should have existed. This report is from Vietnam, Harrison said, showing her a yellow document. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez was trapped in a tunnel complex for 6 days without food or water. When they found him, he was not only alive but helping to rescue other trapped soldiers. The tunnel had somehow expanded to create additional passages and airspaces. You're saying he unconsciously altered the underground environment? We're saying he convinced reality to give him what he needed to save lives, Harrison corrected. And that's just one example out of thousands. He showed her modern reports too. A special forces team in Afghanistan who had somehow become invisible to enemy thermal imaging during a critical extraction. A Navy SEAL who had held his breath underwater for over 20 minutes during a rescue operation. A pilot who had landed a damaged fighter jet after the aircraft had lost structural integrity that should have made flight impossible. The pattern is always the same, Harrison explained. Extreme stress, life or death situations, and a desperate need to protect others. That's when humans access abilities that transcend normal physical limitations. How many people know about this? Fewer than you might think. Most of the individuals displaying these abilities don't fully understand what they're doing. They attribute it to luck, adrenaline, or divine intervention. We've learned it's better that way. Why? Harrison's expression grew dark. Because we've also learned what happens when people try to abuse these abilities. When they use them for personal gain instead of protecting others, the consequences are severe. Reality has a way of balancing the scales. That night, Vexathala sent her first encrypted report to the Zephyrian High Command. But as she typed, she found herself struggling with how to explain what she had discovered. Human beings possess localized reality manipulation abilities that manifest during extreme stress situations, she wrote. Approximately 12% of the population shows some level of capability. Abilities include matter reorganization, probability influence, enhanced perception, and accelerated healing. Government agencies are aware and monitoring the phenomenon. She paused before adding the next line. These abilities appear to be linked to protective instincts and self-sacrifice rather than aggression. Further investigation recommended. The response from the High Command came within hours. Abilities confirmed as existential threat. Prepare detailed tactical assessment for military countermeasures. Vexathala stared at the message, a cold dread settling in her stomach. She had been sent to gather intelligence, but her superiors were already planning for war. The next phase of her investigation took her to a small town in Montana where a mining accident had trapped 12 workers underground. The rescue efforts had been ongoing for 3 days when she arrived, posing as a journalist covering the story. The situation is hopeless, the rescue coordinator told reporters. The tunnel collapsed completely. There's no way anyone could have survived the initial cave-in, and even if they did, they'd have run out of air by now. But families of the trapped miners refused to give up hope. Vexathala watched as Hannah Mitchell, wife of one of the trapped men, placed her hands on the ground and closed her eyes. They're alive, Hannah said with absolute certainty. Tom is alive and he's taking care of the others. Dig here. She pointed to a location 50 feet from where the rescue teams had been working. Ma'am, the geological surveys show that area is solid rock, the coordinator explained gently. There's no tunnel there. There is now, Hannah replied. Against all logic, the rescue team followed her guidance. They dug where she indicated and, impossibly, found an air pocket containing all 12 miners. Not only were they alive, but they had access to an underground stream that hadn't appeared on any geological survey. "How did you know?" Vexathala asked Hannah after the successful rescue. "I could feel him," Hannah said simply. "Tom and I have been married for 23 years. When someone you love is in danger, you just know where they are." But Vexathala's sensors had detected something else. The underground stream was new, created within the last 3 days. Somehow, the intense emotional need to save the trapped men had convinced the earth itself to provide water where none had existed before. Her investigation led her next to a children's hospital in Seattle, where she met Dr. Jennifer Walsh, a pediatric surgeon with an impossible success rate. "I've never lost a patient," Dr. Walsh admitted during their interview. "Not once in 15 years of practice. That should be statistically impossible given the cases I handle." "What's your secret?" "I don't think I have a secret. I just refuse to accept that any child is beyond saving. Sometimes the surgery goes better than it should. Sometimes healing happens faster than expected. Sometimes I find solutions that weren't there in the textbooks." Vexathala reviewed Dr. Walsh's cases. Children who had recovered from terminal cancers, heart surgeries that had succeeded despite insurmountable complications, trauma cases where the injuries had mysteriously healed during the operations themselves. "The other doctors think I'm just lucky," Dr. Walsh said, "but I know it's something else. When a child's life is on the line, I become capable of more than I usually am. It's like the universe conspires to help me save them." After 3 months of investigation, Vexathala had documented dozens of cases. Teachers who could somehow reach troubled students, no matter how difficult their circumstances. Firefighters who could navigate through smoke-filled buildings as if they could see perfectly. Search and rescue volunteers who could find lost people across vast wilderness areas with uncanny accuracy. The pattern was always the same: ordinary humans becoming extraordinary when others needed them most. But her most significant discovery came when she met Dr. Elena Vasquez, a researcher who had been studying risk phenomena for over a decade. "We call it the compassion cascade," Elena explained as she showed Vexathala her classified research. "The abilities don't just manifest randomly. They're triggered by empathy, by the desperate need to help others. The stronger the emotional connection to those in need, the more dramatic the reality manipulation becomes." "You're saying their emotions affect physical laws?" "I'm saying consciousness and reality are more connected than we ever imagined. When humans feel genuine love, compassion, or protective instincts, they can briefly access quantum fields that allow them to influence probability, matter, and energy." Elena showed her brain scans of people using RIS abilities. "Look at this activity in the emotional centers. Now look at the quantum field interactions. They're perfectly synchronized. The stronger the emotion, the stronger the reality manipulation." "What about people who try to use these abilities for selfish reasons?" Elena's expression darkened. "That's where it gets dangerous. We've documented cases where people attempted to use RIS abilities for personal gain. The results are catastrophic. Reality pushes back. Hard." She showed Vexathala a classified file about a man who had tried to use probability manipulation to win at gambling. After initial success, he had experienced what researchers called a probability reversion. Every random event in his life had turned against him for months. Bad luck beyond statistical possibility. Another case involved someone trying to use matter manipulation for theft, Elena continued. She attempted to phase through a bank vault wall. The ability backfired, and she became partially embedded in the wall for 6 hours before emergency responders could free her. "Reality has a moral component?" Vexathala asked, her scientific worldview struggling with the implications. "It appears that way. The abilities work best when motivated by selfless intentions. They fail catastrophically when used for selfish purposes. It's as if the universe itself has an ethical framework." That night, Vexathala realized she faced an impossible dilemma. The Zephyrian High Command wanted intelligence they could use to develop weapons against humans, but what she had discovered wasn't a military threat. It was something far more profound. Humans had somehow evolved a connection between consciousness and reality that was triggered by love and compassion. They weren't hiding dangerous weapons. They were hiding the fact that their greatest strength came from their capacity to care for others. She typed and deleted a dozen different reports, unable to find words that would convey the truth without triggering a preemptive strike against humanity. Finally, she wrote, "Human reality manipulation abilities confirmed, but phenomenon requires further study. Abilities appear limited and unpredictable. Recommend extended observation before determining threat level." It was a lie, but it bought time. Her investigation's final phase brought her to a disaster relief operation in Louisiana, where Hurricane Delilah had devastated several coastal communities. She volunteered with a rescue organization, hoping to observe humans under extreme stress. What she witnessed there changed everything. She watched Maria Santos, a nurse from Texas, somehow find medical supplies in empty buildings when wounded people needed them. She observed Jake Thompson, a carpenter from Ohio, successfully repair critical infrastructure with tools that shouldn't have been adequate for the job. She documented case after case of ordinary people accomplishing impossible things when faced with others' suffering. But the most profound moment came when she met 8-year-old Amy Louise, no relation to her cover identity. Amy had been separated from her family during the evacuation and was staying at a temporary shelter. "I'm not worried," Amy told Vexathala with the matter-of-fact confidence that only children possess. "My mom will find me." "How can you be so sure?" "Because she loves me. When someone loves you that much, they always find you." 3 hours later, Amy's mother appeared at the shelter. She had traveled 200 miles through flooded roads and damaged bridges, somehow navigating to the exact location despite communication networks being down. "I just knew where she was," Amy's mother explained through tears as she held her daughter. "I could feel her, like she was calling to me." Vexathala's sensors confirmed what she had suspected. The emotional bond between mother and daughter had created a quantum entanglement that allowed navigation across impossible distances. That night, she made her decision. Instead of sending a military assessment to the High Command, she wrote a very different kind of report. "After extensive investigation, I have determined that humans do possess extraordinary abilities. But these abilities are not a threat to galactic security. Human reality manipulation is powered by empathy, compassion, and love. The stronger their emotional connection to others, the more they can accomplish. However, these abilities fail completely when used for selfish or aggressive purposes. Humans are not hiding weapons. They are hiding the fact that their greatest power comes from their capacity to care for each other. This is not a military threat. It is an evolutionary breakthrough that could benefit all species. I recommend immediate diplomatic contact to establish peaceful relations and learn from human emotional quantum interface capabilities." She sent the report through encrypted channels, knowing it would likely end her career with Sci-Fi intelligence. 3 days later, she received an unexpected response. It wasn't from the High Command. As her, "Agent Vexathala, your report has been forwarded to the Galactic Ethics Council. Several species have reported similar phenomena in their own populations following increased contact with human culture. It appears humans may be catalyzing a galaxy-wide evolutionary development. Please maintain your position and await further instructions." The message was signed by Director Zolthek of the Galactic Research Division, an organization she hadn't known existed. 6 months later, Vexathala was no longer a spy. She had become Earth's first official alien liaison, working with human researchers to understand the quantum consciousness interface that was apparently spread throughout the galaxy. It turns out, Dr. Elena Vasquez explained during one of their research sessions, that consciousness-based reality manipulation isn't unique to humans. We're just the first species to figure out how to access it reliably through emotional resonance. Other species are developing similar abilities? According to your people's reports, yes. The Zephyrians who have spent time around humans are starting to show enhanced empathic abilities. The Altarian merchants are reporting increased success in negotiations when they focus on mutual benefit rather than profit. Vexathala thought about her own experience. Since arriving on Earth, she had felt more connected to others than ever before. The cold analytical mindset of her intelligence training had gradually been replaced by something warmer, more inclusive. "What if," she said slowly, "what if humans aren't just hiding a secret about themselves? What if they're hiding a secret about the potential of all conscious life? Elena smiled. Now you're thinking like a human. The first official diplomatic mission arrived from the Zephyrian High Command 8 months later. Instead of warships, they sent scientists, philosophers, and teachers eager to learn about the consciousness-reality interface. The secret was out. Humans hadn't been hiding a weapon that could destroy other species. They had been hiding a gift that could elevate all conscious life to unprecedented levels of capability and connection. The galaxy would never be the same, but the change promised to be more beautiful than anyone had dared imagine. As Vexithala watched human and alien researchers working together in laboratories across Earth, she realized that humanity's true secret wasn't their individual abilities. It was their capacity to see the potential in others and help them reach it. The most dangerous thing about humans wasn't their power. It was their hope. And now that hope was spreading across the stars, one species at a time, transforming the galaxy into something more compassionate, more connected, and more capable than it had ever been before. The classified report that was supposed to reveal humanity's lethal secret had instead revealed the secret to life itself. That consciousness, empathy, and love were not just emotions, but fundamental forces that could reshape reality. The universe had been waiting billions of years for someone to figure that out. Humanity had just given the galaxy the keys to its own transcendence.